Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the mechanics of a system that governs the lives of over 1 billion people, yet honestly, it remains one of the most widely misunderstood legal frameworks in the world. We're going to unpack the architecture of Islamic jurisprudence and uncover its surprising historical reach that literally helped build the foundations of modern Western civil law.
Let's take a quick look at our agenda. We'll start by demystifying Sharia and fiqh, then break down the 4 pillars of fiqh, explore the 5 essential goals, look at that wild influence on the French Civil Code, and wrap up with the foundations of legal reasoning.
Section 1. Demystifying Sharia and fiqh.
So, I've got to ask you directly, what exactly is Sharia? Whatever preconceived notions might be popping into your head right now, I invite you to just set them aside for a second. Let's look at what the foundational texts actually say.
It's absolutely crucial to separate 2 distinct concepts that people constantly mix up. Sharia translates broadly to the divine path, and it is incredibly expansive. According to the source text, it encompasses the rights of all creatures. Your soul has a right over you, your body has a right over you, and it even strictly dictates the ethical treatment of animals, plants, and the environment, the whole shebang. It's the ideal divine moral compass. But fiqh is the human effort. It translates to human jurisprudence, the rigorous, logical process where scholars try to derive practical rules to actually apply that divine path to everyday life. So Sharia is the divine ideal. Fiqh is the human legal framework built to understand it.
Section 2. The 4 pillars of fiqh. Now, fiqh isn't just some random collection of rules. Historically, it's systematically divided into these 4 pillars. This structure is what translates an abstract faith into organized spiritual, social, economic, and legal realities. Every single ruling falls right into one of these buckets.
Looking at this first pillar, ibadat, or acts of worship. In the architecture of fiqh, this deals exclusively with the direct relationship between the individual and the divine. We're talking about the rights owed directly to God, so things like prayer, fasting, and pilgrimage. It's that vertical relationship. Then we have the remaining 3 pillars, and these govern human-to-human interactions. Family law, or munakahat, structures marriage and family life to stabilize society and protect lineage. Then there's transactions, or muamalat. This is basically the economic engine. It governs sales, contracts, and ethical trade to protect people's wealth from exploitation, like fraud or usury. And finally, the judiciary, or qada, which deals with the penal code, specifically designed as a deterrent to protect human life and intellect.
Section 3. The 5 essential goals.
Okay, so this brings us to a really fascinating concept called maqasid al-sharia. Maqasid simply means objectives or goals. This is the foundational why behind the what of every legal ruling. The scholars realized early on that the law isn't just about rigid obedience. It actually has an intended purpose for human flourishing.
And here they are, the 5 essential goals. Notice how these are entirely universal human priorities: the preservation of religion, life, intellect, lineage, and wealth. The entire architecture of Islamic jurisprudence is literally designed to protect these 5 things in equal measure. To put that into perspective, prohibiting intoxicants, that exists to preserve the intellect. Banning theft, that's there to preserve wealth. It all ties back to these goals.
To really cement this, look at the historical scholar al-Shatibi. He famously wrote, "The Sharia was put in place to preserve them, and whatever aids in preserving them is a means to that end. Whatever contradicts them is rejected." Think about what a massive theological safeguard that is. If a human legal ruling, a piece of fiqh, ends up destroying human life or wealth, it fundamentally contradicts the goals of Sharia. And according to the system's own rules, it must be rejected out of hand.
Section 4. Influence on French Civil Code. Now for a really surprising historical twist. When we trace the history through comparative legislative studies, a distinct timeline emerges. When Napoleon Bonaparte arrived in North Africa, he encountered a highly developed society governed by the Maliki school of Islamic jurisprudence. Recognizing its sophistication, especially around the pillar of transactions or contracts, he actually had these books of fiqh translated into French, and subsequently the French legal system adopted numerous civil laws directly from those translated texts.
And hey, if you're a bit skeptical of this connection, just look at this stunning, documented quote from a letter Napoleon wrote to one of his commanders, Marmont. He stated, "When we return to France, I will apply the noble Quran as law, for it is the most fitting and beneficial for this nation." I mean, wow! He had a profound, deeply pragmatic respect for the structure and equity of this legal system, particularly how it organized civil society.
So we can clearly trace this bridge between East and West. The translated texts of Maliki fiqh, which dealt with mundane but absolutely vital things like civil disputes, property rights, and commercial contracts, directly informed the French Civil Code. And you know, that same French Civil Code went on to become a foundational framework for modern civil rights all across Europe. It's a pretty powerful reminder of how human civilization constantly shares and builds on knowledge.
Section 5. The Foundations of Reasoning.
So how did they actually do this? They used a science called usul al-fiqh. Think of this as the ultimate academic rulebook. It's a strict methodological instrument designed to prevent individuals from just making up laws based on their own whims or political desires. It provides a universal, rigorous logic for ordering conflicting evidence.
The source texts explain that this science of reasoning requires two distinct components to actually work. First, you have the logic of reason. You must perfectly map out the external evidence from the source material all the way to the final judgment. But equally important is the logic of the self. A judge has to rigorously diagnose their own internal biases, their emotions, and their cultural blind spots. Because, well, a corrupted self will always distort the final legal result no matter how solid the external evidence is.
Furthermore, this system ruthlessly ranks sources of knowledge. Let's face it, not all information is created equal. Primary sources, like direct observation or original texts, sit right at the top. Below that, you have authenticated sources, which are backed by reliable collective consensus. And at the very bottom are presumptive sources, single isolated accounts. The golden rule here, a presumptive isolated account can never, ever overrule a primary established fact. It's a real game changer for maintaining legal integrity.
Ultimately, the absolute genius of this legal philosophy is what we call its unifying axis. It's constantly asking two essential questions. What is fixed and permanent, and what is cultural and changing? By separating eternal moral principles from temporary societal contexts, this jurisprudence is explicitly designed to adapt to new eras without losing its core identity.
Which brings us to the end of our explainer, and I want to leave you with a thought to ponder. We've just seen how the structured logical pillars of Islamic fiqh literally crossed the Mediterranean to help shape modern European law. So how does recognizing this shared DNA between ancient Islamic jurisprudence and Western civil law change your perspective on global history? It really highlights that the pursuit of justice and structured reason is a deeply interconnected, shared human heritage. Thanks for joining me on this one, and keep questioning the world around you.